Chapter 1. The Encounter with the Ancestral and the Tartarian Crystal. Hubert walked through the crowded streets of the city. The noise of cars, the people who always seemed in a hurry, the giant screens endlessly replaying the same news. Everything looked normal, just like any other day. Yet deep inside, something unsettled him, as if his life and the world around him didn't quite fit. He had carried unanswered questions for a long time, but lately they had grown louder. He asked himself in silence, is this routine really all there is? Why do I feel something is missing behind every gesture of the people around me? What are those lights I sometimes see in the sky which no one else seems to notice? Why is there always a scientific explanation that never quite fits, like a wall hiding every doubt? Life went on. His friends repeated what they heard in the media. His job was monotonous, everything bound to the ticking of a clock. But he felt life couldn't just be this, that there had to be something beyond it all. Still, he felt empty, and his surroundings only deepened his doubts. One morning, he decided to take a solitary trip to his countryside home, something he did from time to time to escape the city's noise and reflect on what had been happening within him. That evening, while sitting outside watching the stars, he noticed strange lights moving erratically across the sky. They caught his attention but soon vanished. After the sighting, the starlight itself seemed to fade for a few seconds. In the stillness of the night, he drifted into sleep until dawn. The next morning, he went out for a walk while the mist still covered the fields. The fresh air carried with it a peculiar feeling, something he never experienced in the city. Yet here it was, undeniable. Suddenly, in the distance, a figure emerged slowly from the fog. A man in an orange robe with a long white beard was walking toward him. His steps were calm, as though he had been waiting for this meeting all along. Hubert was startled, since it was unusual to see anyone in the area, especially so early in the morning. Perhaps, he thought, it was a neighbor starting work at dawn, curious about the light he had seen the night before. But as the figure approached, Hubert noticed something strange. The man's clothing seemed much older than anything common, and he didn't look like a simple farmer or traveler. Deep down, Hubert felt a sense of recognition, as though he had seen him somewhere before, though he couldn't tell where. The surrounding mist made the moment even more surreal. The conversation began. Hubert waved from a distance, greeting the unusual visitor. Once close enough, he asked where the man had come from. The stranger smiled gently and replied in a calm, almost whispering voice,
"From very far away indeed."
Hubert shifted uneasily. The man seemed trustworthy, but his answers made little sense. "Very far away? Did you walk all night?" Hubert asked in disbelief. The man avoided the question and introduced himself as Tinha. Then he said,
"I know you've been questioning life, Hubert. I know you feel that the world around you is but an illusion, something incomplete."
Hubert froze. How could this man know his thoughts? Tinha continued,
"As for your earlier question, I am an ancestral. I come from beyond what you call Antarctica, though in truth my journey has been even longer. I have been here for quite some time. These lands belong to you, to me, to all of humanity."
Hubert stared at him, incredulous and afraid. He began to think the old man was either mocking him or insane. Then, from his robe, the elder drew out a small, glowing object. He placed it in Hubert's hand, a blue crystal shaped like a rhombus, pulsing faintly between his fingers.
You ask yourself these questions because the world you live in is an absolute lie, built upon a corrupted system. That is why, my friend, your thoughts are already guiding you toward the true connection with the celestial lands.
Tinha went on.
This is a Tartarian crystal. With it, you will see what most cannot. Your doubts will vanish forever. You will discover that much of what surrounds you is deception, though deep down, you've already begun to sense it yourself. This will open your eyes even more. This world is a system forged by the Custodians, parasitic colonizers who arrived long ago and reshaped human history through resets again and again.
Hubert swallowed hard, fear rising in his chest. He looked at the crystal, then back at the old man. The words echoed deeply in his mind, but the story was almost impossible to believe. "So you're saying we're a colony?" he asked, voice trembling. The man nodded slowly.
Yes, Hubert. A human colony under the Custodians. But there is a way out. Awakening begins when one refuses to accept the illusion as real. To break the system entirely, however, requires a critical mass of awakened humans. This is not an easy task. With this crystal, you will see those still trapped in the illusion, enslaved under the parasite's dominion.
Hubert clenched the crystal tightly. The wind howled through the fields, and for a moment he felt something invisible surround him. The object in his hand seemed both strange and beautiful, pulsing like a heart, its glow intensifying, as if alive. "And these Custodians, as you call them, from where do they control us? Can they see us now?" The old man explained that the Custodians watched and monitored from many bases, some hidden at the edges of the known world, others beneath the oceans, and even deep within the earth. After a few more words, he told Hubert he had to leave, but that the crystal was his to keep, a gift. And with that, the man faded back into the mist, disappearing the same way he had arrived. Hubert stood in silence, overwhelmed. The stranger had spoken as though he knew his innermost thoughts. He gazed at the crystal, still unsure of its purpose. Nightfall came quickly, almost unnaturally fast, as though time had slipped away unnoticed. Hubert began to prepare for his return to the city. Chapter 2: Discovering the Sleepers. Back in the city, Hubert couldn't stop staring at the blue crystal resting in his palm. Its rhomboid shape looked simple, yet with every movement it reflected impossible flashes, as if fragments of the sky itself were trapped inside. Its color was hypnotic. The old man's words echoed in his mind. "Much of what surrounds you is a lie. The crystal will show you the truth." But how? Hubert kept asking himself again and again, lost in its glow. That same afternoon, he decided to put it to the test. He walked to a crowded city square with the crystal in his hand. At first, everything seemed the same. people walking, children playing. But when he lifted the crystal to his eyes, the world changed completely. Some faces dimmed, fading into pale blankness. Their smiles looked hollow. They spoke, yet their words were identical, as if repeating a script handed to them from elsewhere, a broadcast from an unknown source, like the static of an old misaligned radio. A woman sitting on a bench murmured the exact same words as a man standing a few meters away. Most of them lacked distinct features, their faces eerily similar. A shiver ran down Hubert's spine. He lowered the crystal quickly, his heart pounding. Without it, the same people looked ordinary, calm, just as he had always seen them. But when he raised it again, the truth was undeniable. These men and women were not truly alive. They seemed asleep, and so he began calling them by that name, the sleepers, just as the ancestral had mentioned during their strange encounter in the countryside. As he walked through the city, he saw them everywhere. On the streets, eyes glued to their phones, all watching the same broadcast, many repeating the exact words they heard. In the shops, parroting news phrases from the television like mantras. On the buses, sitting rigid, reciting data they had memorized, living mechanical routines, surviving rather than living. Then the mental noise revealed itself again. Hubert described it as a constant buzz in the background, interference like that of a very old radio. Was this the sound that kept the sleepers anesthetized? Had it always been there, hidden from his senses until the crystal revealed it? He wondered. He recalled the ancestral's words about this mental radio that had replaced what was once the pineal gland. Thoughts, he realized, were being infiltrated by an external source, shaping emotions, steering actions, mimicking memories, and hollowing out the present moment, leaving people suspended between past and future. But not all were the same. Hubert now understood what the ancestral meant by the sleepers, those unable to see beyond the constant chatter of their own minds, beyond their daily routine, beyond the unquestioned story of their existence. They were consumed by the very system that enslaved them. And yet, among the multitude, he noticed a minority, different, faint sparks hidden within the crowd. That night, in the silence of his room, Hubert stared at the crystal glowing faintly under the lamp. He realized that the entire city, the routines of everyday life, was nothing more than a script imposed by the custodians, the colonizers who had built this system. Another world revealed itself before his eyes, or rather through the crystal that unveiled it. How long have we lived as prisoners without knowing it? Could these custodians truly monitor everything? He asked himself again. The answer never came, only the persistent buzz, humming like the invisible dome vibrating above his head. He stepped outside, lifted the crystal toward the heavens. And the sky itself dissolved into a shifting mirage, a strange membrane with no stars. Was the sky itself another deception of the system? Was the heaven he had known since childhood nothing but a projection? Chapter 3: The Resistance. The days that followed were torture for Hubert. Each time he lifted the crystal, the difference became painfully clear. A multitude of sleepers filled the streets, repeating the same phrases, walking without question, numbed by the mental noise that vibrated in the air. Some even spoke about planets they saw on television. Discoveries placed at absurd distances, floating in emptiness. Others argued fiercely over politics and trivial matters, some even turning violent as they defended words and ideologies that were not their own. It all felt like a performance, as if they were secondary actors in an invisible play orchestrated by parasitic colonizers. And Hubert, he realized, was also part of this colony, ensnared without knowing it, like so many others. He felt the temptation to scream, to shake them, to show them the truth. But who would stop to listen? Something deep inside told him it was useless, that they would not understand, that they would simply stare at him as if he were insane and continue reciting their script. Or worse, many would turn on him with fury and violence, even to the point of causing him harm, or worse still. One night, while walking through a dimly lit alley, Hubert lifted the crystal almost unconsciously. And then he saw him, a man standing alone, a faint blue aura radiating around his body. He was not like the others. His face was defined, distinct, even when seen through the crystal. The man gazed at him in silence, then gestured without words for Hubert to follow. Hubert hesitated, but obeyed. The alley led to the back door of an old building. Inside, in a basement lit only by old lamps, a small group awaited him. They were not many, barely a dozen, but their eyes burned with intensity, with unrest, with questions. They were a resistance, fighting their own secret war. They called themselves the Resistance of Nox. On a wooden table lay ancient maps, yellowed scrolls and worn books, drawings of concentric circles, sketches of ice walls, strange symbols. One of them spoke, "Welcome, Hubert. It seems you've already seen what the others still cannot." Hubert, astonished, said nothing. The man continued. "The Tartarian crystal opened your eyes. We too were contacted, each in different ways, at different times. And like you, we learned that this world is not free, that everything around us is an illusion." From the shadows, a woman added, "The Custodians do not only control history, Hubert. They control the weather, the sky itself. Everything we call daily life is under their filthy hands." Hubert's voice dropped to a whisper. "So everything is a lie? Even the sky?" An elder of the group nodded gravely. "The sky is a projection. What you saw above was only a veil. Beyond the ice walls lie other lands, other domes. And though we were created as something greater, Hubert, they have reduced us to little more than a colony, kept in a dream that seems eternal, yet is never forgotten. They want us insignificant, erased from true history. For the colonizers, it is dangerous that we discover our future and our purpose here in these lands." Silence fell upon the room. A knot tightened in Hubert's stomach. What he had always suspected, in secret, stood before him, confirmed by strangers who spoke with the same certainty as the man in the orange robe. Finally, one of them pointed to the map spread across the table, a line of ships drawn moving toward a vast white wall, towering and unyielding. The time will come when we attempt to escape. The custodians will raise storms to stop us, and their monitoring bases will try to strike us down as we approach, and that moment is near. Hubert touched the blue crystal in his pocket. He understood now that his life had changed forever. The path was becoming clear. But then the woman in the back spoke again, her voice urgent. "Do not mistake the direction. The path is also here, awakening the sleepers. It is not only about escape, but about a radical change to silence the mental noise that comes from the manipulated sky and the artificial ice walls. The change can begin today."